Today we're going to have a look at another one of these immutable Linux distributions. Of course, we talked about these in a recent video, and this is just another example of an immutable distribution where we have a system which is designed to resist changes, kind of like the Android model is kind of what they're going for here, utilizing packages through Flatpak, but also using Distrobox for additional packages as well. Of course, today we are going to be talking about RLX OS or Relax OS. Both of them are appropriate names. Thanks for checking out this video by Switch to Linux, where we have a look at Linux news, and why you might consider using alternative software to the main big tech approaches. And today we are going to have a look at this distribution. So if you like this type of content, subscribe to the channel. If you've not already subscribed, leave us a like and a comment down below. And so today we want to have a brief look at this new one which hit the market, and I want to look at a couple of different elements of this particular distribution. So the first is, this is a distribution that aims to be an independent distribution. So we talked about some of these are based on Fedora and Ubuntu. Of course, Manjaro has its immutable versions coming out now. Debian has some. There's even some based on Arch. SteamOS is an immutable system apparently, as it is on the Steam Decks. Of course, people in the other video were leaving comments, reminding me that the new version of the Mac under their Apple Silicon, those are immutable under the same general approach. So this is an approach that a lot of systems are moving towards. And this one here is an independent Linux distribution. So they're using a Linux kernel and some elements of in this case, they're running XFCE desktop environment. But other than that, they don't have a package manager in this distribution. So they're using sysroot for doing their updates. They're using Flatpak for your basic management, and they have Distrobox for anything that you'd like to containerize as an application. So they are seeking to be a user-friendly for new Linux users. I'm going to question that one a little bit by the end of this, and I'll explain why. But it is also extendable. There are some extra tools that you can add on top of extensions. So like I looked at, Wine was one of those extensions. They have Qt, they have Sway. So if you don't want XFCE, they have a couple of different window managers. I didn't see any full desktop environments in there, but we'll have a brief look at those. They are wanting to be, they say, straightforward, easy to use, and beginner friendly. Again, I'll comment more on that at the end of the video. It also seeks to be a lightweight system. It does not require a ton of system resources, and if we actually look at their documentation, they will tell us what their system resources happen to be. So having a look at the supported hardware tab, they are obviously a 64-bit only architecture. They support EFI or legacy BIOS, but they do not support Secure Boot. So if you need Secure Boot, this is not for you. Basic Intel or AMD, so we don't have ARM processors or 32-bit systems. They say the minimum requirement is 700 megabytes of memory with an expected 2 gig. They say storage is 16 gigabytes with an expected 50. I am going to doubt that 16 gig. And the reason is, anytime you're running a system like this, which effectively has 2 copies of the operating system, if you're doing this on 16 gigs, you have 0 space for files, if 8 is even enough to run an image of the operating system. So maybe, allegedly, that is the case. I am not going to test that here, but I do question that on an immutable system that's using OS tree to swap between 2 system images. And they do have graphics there listed: i9-15, Iris, NVIDIA R300, R600. Some of the documentation suggests there might be a few issues with NVIDIA. I did see NVIDIA as extensions available under sysroot as well. So there might be some little caveat to that I didn't end up finding in my research. But there is our basic system requirements. As far as the installation, it is a very simple installation, and it was actually quite quick, in fact, as well. So we will go ahead and have a brief look at what the installation looks like here. And then we're going to talk about the initial setup and the install of the system. So here I'm just booting it onto a virtual machine, just throwing the downloadable ISO into my drive. And we land up here. So here is the welcome to the RLX GNU Linux. So here you can do a clean install, you can do a selection partition, you can do manual partition, you can choose which device you are installing it to. So we're going to do a clean install. So we are doing a clean install. It's booting legacy. Of course, we are in virtual machine. You can, of course, install it under EFI. If we were to be using my standalone hardware installers, I could do that. And then now all it's doing is just cloning the entire ISO onto the device. And then it's just going to ask us for a reboot after this really only takes a couple minutes. All right, so that is done. If you're paying attention to the time up at the top, that took a total of 3 minutes to get installed. So we hit the close, and it's going to reboot itself. At least it should. Now, of course, I need to manually intervene here on the virtual machine, and I'm going to need to boot the ISO out. Not sure why I'm getting this black box here. I have not seen that black box before. Very interesting. So here you can see there's only one object in the OS tree. That's because it's just been installed. There are some issues that that indicated that there could be a problem if there's not a second one. So if you run your first system update, it's going to create that that next OS tree. So we can look at that as well. All right, so up here, we are just going to give it a name. So let's just give it RLX OS. I'm going to give it a super secret password that's definitely not 123. And then we can use the same password for the super user, or we can log in without a password. We have to select our time zone. Now here, I initially was clicking all over this and I didn't know what to do. Well, it's you need to click this off, the little button down there off, and then over here, this is where you're going to enter your time zones. I hit my caps lock key, so hit my New York time zone there. Hit next, and you can see it didn't actually save that. So, no, not cancel. All right, well, I got to do that all again. Got to turn this off. Hit New York, and then I think I have to hit enter, I think. See, it's still giving me the UTC time zone. I did get it to work once. I just can't remember exactly how. So, okay, we're just going to stick with UTC. Okay, whatever. Don't care. All right. So there it is complete. So now we just need to hit this. It's going to reboot itself again. And now we log in with our actual password this time. Now we have a welcome screen on startup. Hit our next. We can choose our theme. So this one's more of a dark theme. This one's more of a light theme. And then we can adjust the display scale. So if you want to scale things down, you can do that. Hitting our next. This is going to boot up our application manager. So as we had said earlier, this is using everything from Flatpak. So here is the software, and everything in the software is Flatpak. There's no package manager in this distribution. And you see FlatHub is configured and set up. So anything that you can find on FlatHub, you can install here. Here we got Brave, we have Thunderbird, of course LibreWolf is on here. Here's Evolution. We have Endeavor for managing your tasks. Just anything that you can find over there on the Flatpak repository we have in there. Let me look into these so you can see that it's reporting out this is a verified app. You can see the only source is FlatHub. So if you wanted to run that, you can go ahead and run that application. As far as everything else, it is running XFCE. So here is our basic menus. If we look at our, here's all applications, development software. You can see there's very minimal software. We just have a basic web browser. We have the terminal. We just have basic system tools. No other real applications or packages there. Here is the basic settings panel for XFCE. So if you're familiar with XFCE, that will all be particularly familiar to you. Now, here is where we get into some of the areas where I question the user friendliness. There is no way to upgrade the system without going into the terminal. And we also don't have a way to install anything that's not Flatpak without going into the terminal. So first, let's look at installing software using Distrobox. We need to boot up the terminal, and we're going to use Distrobox. So if we do Distrobox create -i Ubuntu, then this will download the Ubuntu image. Telling us permission denied, though. That's interesting. Let me double check the documentation real quick. This is one of the things, though, that I found on this distribution is the documentation is very scanty, and it may not work as well. Dude, no, I don't want to set Firefox as my... It's like there's only one browser on the system. Why is it not the default? All right, let's do RLX OS. Go back to the distribution itself. Go into the documentation. And have a look at this. So here it's telling us Distrobox create -i Ubuntu. We did that, and I'm unable to create it. Let's try doing a Debian instead. See if I can get any of these to work. Yeah, so I'm not actually able to pull anything in. So on my particular instance here, I cannot apparently run anything on Distrobox. I kind of wanted to show you that, and actually that's something I didn't fully test on my previous install of this. You know what? Here's one thing we're going to try. Just in case it doesn't want to do it because we don't have that second system image, let's do the update. So we're going to do sudo sysroot update. So you can see that we're on the stable channel. Let's hit yes. We'll update the system. And then we'll have to reboot the system. And then I'll get in there to the BIOS menu and show you that there will be 2 OS trees in there now. Okay, so we'll have to reboot. And I'm going to hold the shift key here, which will give us the boot menu. Now you can see that we have multiple OS trees in here. So the inactive one, which I believe is the one going to be set as 1, is going to be the backup if something doesn't work. And the 0 should be the new one. So it should switch the images back and forth as you are running your system updates or changing any of your systems. I'm just trying this just to see if there are a few system quirks if there's no second image there. And so I'm wondering if that's what our problem happens to be. So you might have to get in here and run that upgrade system through the terminal. There's no GUI way to do it. You might have to run that before you run anything. Distrobox create -i, and we'll do the Ubuntu again. Let's see if we can do this. Still telling us permission denied. So I don't know why there was nothing in the documentation, but I'm not quite sure exactly why it is not allowing me to do that. So let's have a brief look at this. So here's we need a few easy commands to set up Distrobox. First, you need to open an application window. You need to have active internet connection with at least a few gigabytes bandwidth, depending on the application and distro. To create a container for Ubuntu, execute this command, Distrobox create Ubuntu. Let's go ahead and just in case I'm doing something incorrect, and permission denied. So I have no idea why we can't get into that. I'm guessing I'm going to get the same on all of these. Let's try Arch Linux. Permission denied. All right, that's what we had to do. We actually had to run the Distrobox create -root -i to get it to download. So again, this is one of the challenges that we have with this distribution. The documentation does not seem to work right. So the developers need to fix the documentation to get this to work. Or, you know, is this something related to virtualization? I don't know. But anyway, we are now polling the Ubuntu library. Now, it does tell us that once that is set up, then we will find the Ubuntu container inside there. So at this point, we can exit that and pull this up and Okay, never mind. The Ubuntu container should be in there. That's what the documentation tells us. So here you can see once you run this command, you enter the command. Once you've created the container, you can close that terminal and search the installed distribution in the application finder. Let's look at our Distrobox commands. So assemble, create, enter. Let's do Distrobox, enter Ubuntu. Oh, of course not. Enter -- root Ubuntu. I'm just throwing mud at the wall now. Okay, no idea. We'll leave that alone and see if it does something else. Let's pull up another instance of the terminal. Let's go into sysroot. Oh, there it is. It's actually starting the container now. Okay, so we need to do everything apparently with Distrobox's root. So just take note of that. So the first time you run a container, it will take a little bit. So we're going to give that its time. We're going to talk a little bit about the updates and things. All right, so let's look at extensions first. So if we do sysroot, if I can type root right, we do sysroot list. This is going to give us the available list of extensions. So here we have, you can see we have Qt, we have Window Manager Kit X11, we have GDK, we have Enlightenment. I'm not sure, is that the desktop environment or is that something else? We have BeastBomb, Sway, i3 are definitely window managers. We have Wine for obviously Windows compatibility. We have QEMU, which is for, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I've not used that one. That's for virtualization. So there's a number of different extensions. And if you want to install the extensions, we can come down here and you can see just sudo sysroot install, give it the extension ID, or remove to give it that extension ID. As far as updates are concerned, there are 3 different channels. We have a stable channel, we have a preview, and we have an unstable channel. So to do this, that does say sysroot switch channel, but again, we should be doing that under root. So let's do sudo sysroot switch, and let's do unstable. Give it our password there. And now we have, you'll see that it's receiving metadata, it's grabbing things, and what's going to be doing is it's going to switch our entire channel over into the unstable branch. Now this one over here, it is set as it's complete. Let's see if that actually put it into the menu yet. Not seeing it yet. All right, so... And I'm not totally sure if I'm inside of the Ubuntu right now. I think I am. Let's do a sudo apt update. That'll kind of tell us what we're doing. There you go. So you can see that we are inside of Ubuntu now. So if I wanted to do something like install our, let's do FileZilla. I know it's easy, small, simple file I can install. I can do sudo apt install FileZilla on Ubuntu. So let's go ahead and download it. Such a small file. It's still tons of space. Oh, just 34 megabytes. All right, that's not. Okay, so that says it is complete. And we'll have a brief look. You'll see FileZilla is not in the menu. But if I type in FileZilla over here, it should boot up FileZilla, which is excellent. Now, if I want to export this, I should be able to do a Distrobox -export -app and FileZilla. That should appear in the applications list in a few seconds. So now we have FileZilla on Ubuntu in our applications menu. So now I can boot it up just by grabbing it from the menu. Now, because it's using Distrobox, whenever I do that and I boot that up from the menu, then it will have to start the Distrobox. In theory, it should start. Okay, let's go ahead and exit out of here. So now we have, let's see if I want to first see if Ubuntu. See, Ubuntu still does not show up, so their documentation is not correct. And for whatever reason, I'm not able to actually access that file yet. But again, it's immutable. Let's reboot the system first. But we're going to wait for this system here to finish doing what it's doing. So this is switching us over into a new branch. So that says it's good. You'll see it has updated the boot menu for this. So let's go ahead and reboot our system. And we'll see if any of this stuff actually works correctly. So you'll see some of the challenges that I had with this distribution here. Some of the documentation mostly is what's out of place. Distrobox works if you're running it as root. That's not clear in the documentation. Also, the documentation does not list properly how to change your tree, although it does give us the sudo required for your updates. So let's go ahead and get into here and see what this guy looks like. Remember, now we are allegedly on the unstable, so hopefully things work. And it's booting Firefox back up, presumably because that was actually open. Here's FileZilla. Let's see if we can get that to actually work. Now, it won't boot up instantly because it does have to boot up that DOS or the distro box in the background. But again, just like I've seen before, it doesn't appear as though it's actually doing anything. I can't really tell. Let's see if there's a system. There's a task manager here. Let's see what's going on. Okay, I just want to see if I have Distrobox or FileZilla or Ubuntu or anything opening up that suggests that's actually working. So, and my guess is quite possibly because we had to run everything as root in that distro box. It's very possible this won't work at all. It's probably just failing on a permission is probably what's happening here. Let's look at Distrobox. I'm going to try and enter it without root again and see if I can get in there. So permission denied. All right. So I can run FileZilla if I boot into the distro box as root, but I can't get into the distro box without being root. So that is one of our challenges that we are experiencing. So we've seen there the extensions, we've seen the updates, we've seen that. And let's go ahead and wrap this video up with some thoughts that I have. So we see a distribution that is aiming to be user-friendly and security-minded. I completely guarantee they have the security minded in place. It is very much like the Android system. It is completely immutable. It's very difficult to do any basic system changes. I didn't attempt to do the things like, I need to do as web design for doing, changing my server by adjusting the hosts file. But what I found is it's not really user-friendly because it does rely so much on the terminal. Even the documentation, however, does not appear to be complete, at least in my particular setup. And I'm not sure exactly why that happens to be. In my instance here, I'm finding the distro box does not work the way it's supposed to work. I'm having to access root a lot more, and I think that that's the reason the application is not booting from the menu, because it's basically requiring root permission, and I'm not logged into the system as root. Leading me to believe, I wonder if the system was tested with a root user and not with a standard user, which would completely defeat the purpose of the security entirely. So it also does have minimal documentation. That documentation does not seem to be accurate, again, in my setup. And I'm noticing that I need to access distro root via the root user. I have to boot up any applications in that through the terminal, not utilizing the menu system. And even the updates and switching does not properly give me the requirement for sudo in the documentation, leading me to have to figure some of these issues out, in which I'm able to understand it because I've worked with tons and tons of different Linux distributions. But to say it's for a new user and to have to rely on the terminal so much and then to have the documentation not as correct, there are some downsides to this distribution that hopefully we can get resolved. I would love to see it if we can get the distro box issue resolved without requiring root so that we can use it exactly the way the system requires. And again, just patch up that one little tiny issue. So what do I think of this overall distribution? The problem is this distribution and vanilla are attempting to accomplish effectively the same thing, but vanilla actually gets it down. They got the OS tree. They got the, I think they're using OS tree. They may not be. They may use something else. But they got the immutable distribution. But what they have as a major advantage is they have a GUI tool to manage the distro boxes. So even though you need to use the terminal a little bit for those distros, I'm noticing on that particular distribution, everything is working out of the box a lot more. Additionally, they have several more distributions than just Ubuntu, Debian, Arch, and Kali Linux. They also have OpenSUSE, they have Fedora, there were a couple other ones that were added there recently as well. So they have a lot of different options in there as well, and I'm noticing that all of the application exporting is done automatically in that distribution. So it seems as though these two are trying to accomplish similar tasks, but that one gets it done right out of the box. So that's not hate for this particular distribution. I want to see this one succeed. There's just a little bit more work that needs done to it. Now, maybe this is because it might be a sole developer. And for that, great kudos for developing a system that generally works well. Obviously, the Flatpak support works and is excellent. And some of the other system, the system layouts, I love the fact that we have one of these based on XFCE because everything else is based on GNOME, which I just don't want to use GNOME. Thank you. I will use XFCE if that is an option over that. So this is a nice distribution. You should have a look at it. But again, just be warned, it is not as user-friendly as initially spoken, as some of it still relies too heavily on the terminal, and the terminal commands and the documentation is just not lining up with what my particular experience has been. But I hope that the distribution finds these issues, fixes these, and gets us better documentation, and maybe fixes the issue with Distrobox. I don't know why it's requiring root. Is that a VirtualBox thing or something else? Should I try this out on the real hardware and see how it compares on the real hardware? I don't know. I'm left with a number of different questions. But this is definitely one, if you're into the immutable Linux distributions, what it has going for it is independent, so it doesn't have all of the baggage of all the other distributions. It just built up from the ground up with exactly what it needs to run. It is extendable, which I think vanilla might be, but I can't remember for sure. And it is solving the extra software outside of Flatpak with Distrobox. So it does actually have a lot of great things going for it. So I'm hoping that we can see this distribution mature into something that's a lot more sound. But as of right now, I would probably not suggest to try using this one in a production environment until a couple of these issues are resolved. So with that, there's my thoughts on this one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.